Welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video. Merry Christmas to you all, if it's that time of year. If it's not, meh. I'm going to talk to you about an issue from the Nativity stories that I think is a little bit overlooked actually, and it's a bit of a philosophical issue. And so it's slightly different from your historical contradictions that may take place between the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew. Now, to give you some context for the subject I'm going to talk about today, this only happens in the Gospel of Matthew. So the Nativity only happens in two accounts, two Gospel accounts, the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew, and they both have completely different storylines. And in fact, the only commonality between them is that Jesus is born of a virgin birth in Bethlehem and eventually moves to Nazareth. And that's it. All other details are different between the two sources. Now, in Matthew, you have the Magi coming from the east. The Magi don't appear at all in Luke, but in Matthew, they come from the east. They follow a supernatural star, and it has to be supernatural because you can't follow a star that's just a randomly normal star, naturalistic star up in the sky. You're just, as the Earth rotates, stars move, you'd just be going around in circles or whatever. So they're following this supernatural star, but it somehow gets lost around, or they lose it around Jerusalem. And then they are walking around, which is a bit of a dogleg from the east, down to Bethlehem. So they are walking around Jerusalem, shouting about a Messiah. Has anyone seen a Messiah? And Herod hears about this and asks his scribes to go and investigate it. And they find out about a hitherto unknown prophecy saying, well, yeah, there is a Messiah due to be born around. Strangely, no one knows about this, but then suddenly they do. So Herod says to the Magi, look, you go and find this little kid and praise him. And after you've praised him, come back and tell me where he is so that I can go down and praise him. Obviously with secret intentions of going to kill Jesus because he's worried about this upstart Messiah taking over his throne. So Herod is able to get the Magi or somehow calibrate where the star is in the sky for a later reason that we'll come back to. But then the Magi do go off and somehow pick up the star again and go to Bethlehem and praise Jesus. After they praise Jesus, they have a dream sequence warning that says, don't go back to Jerusalem to Herod. And they, scarper off to the east a different way. So they don't go back to Herod because they're warned. What Herod then does is he says, oh dear, gets angry or whatnot, and goes down and orders the death of babies up to the age of 2 because he's triangulated where the star would have been, blah, 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 blah. So he kills all children up to the age of 2 so that he can definitely ensure that Jesus is killed. However, as this is a kind of, Herod is the new Pharaoh, Jesus is the new Moses, it's a bit of a Passover. Jesus and family escape to Egypt for a couple of years so that Jesus can come out of Egypt to fulfill a prophecy that says, out of Egypt, my son is called. So this is a kind of replay of the Pharaoh murder of the firstborn story. But the point here that I want to talk about is that the Magi were warned not to go back to Jerusalem. So that Herod then comes down and kills a bunch of children. What this means is that the forewarning causes the children to be killed and not Jesus. So that's an interesting warning in and of itself. But why did God not get that dream sequence forewarning to happen before the Magi even got to Jerusalem? In other words, God could have saved the children and Jesus' life by having the warning happen before Jerusalem rather than before returning to Jerusalem. the way it's structured in this manner is that Herod, because at the end of the day, Matthew needs to get Herod involved in the story. That's why the star gets lost around Jerusalem and they wander around and get Herod involved, because he needs Herod to be the new Pharaoh. This is constructing a new Moses story. But if you were not trying to do that, if this really happened and God really was involved in this story, then there's no doubt in my mind that God would put that warning before the Magi got to Jerusalem, so that Herod was never involved in the story, that neither Jesus nor those innocent children were in danger of losing their lives, and the story would have progressed as normal, and Herod would have died, and Jesus would have been born and moved back to Nazareth, or up to Nazareth, and it would have carried on as was, but without the death of those innocent children and without Herod getting involved. So I think that's a really important point that's often not discussed, because it's rather more philosophical and theological rather than historical and biblically exegetical. So it's not so much about looking at the text, but actually wondering the order of these things and second guessing why God did certain things. I think it's a real problem, and I'd be interested to see if there are any answers. Put your comments below, question everything, and grab my book, The Nativity: A Critical Examination, which looks at loads of issues to do with the Gospels of Luke and Mark and their nativity accounts. And drop by my blog at A Tippling Philosopher. Subscribe and press that button, that bell button. Thank you.